Thank you, Dan. Our last panelist is Laura Friedman, who is the Legislative Policy and Government Relations Director of Americans for Peace Now and one of Washington's most prominent experts on policy, Middle East policy. Laura also writes a legislative roundup every week, which is sort of the required reading. If you're interested in this issue and what goes on at Capitol Hill, what happened the previous week and coming up, it's got great information, great gossip. It's really an important piece that you should be reading if you care about this issue on Washington. Lara is also greatly published, and she wrote an article recently responding to Ian Lustig's article that many of you may have seen in the New York Times, basically saying the two-state solution is dead and Israelis and Palestinians should live together under a one-state solution. I'd like Lara to expand on that and talk to us a little bit about give us an overview of the viability of a two-state solution.
Thank you, Deborah. I'm sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so I have a slightly scratchy voice. So I'm actually very happy to speak last on this panel because I'm sitting amongst the most learned people on the facts of the issue. And I'm someone who believes the facts matter, which is why I took the time to respond to Professor Lustig. And I hope you'll read it. One of my friends read it and said, boy, I hope I never make you angry. I didn't think it was that tough. But the facts do matter. And the piece I wrote, I referred to magical thinking. And maybe it's magical thinking, maybe it's lazy thinking, maybe it's depressed thinking. But the premise that we come in here is that we have to defend the viability of the two-state solution. And if we can't, then we have to accept that it's over and there's an alternative. And that premise is fundamentally flawed. And I think my fellow panelists have done a very good job at explaining both why the two-state solution is viable. And again, the facts matter. It's very easy for people who are either depressed about the two-state solution or who are what a friend of mine calls crypto one-staters. People who really don't support the two-state solution, but it's not politically correct to say you don't support the two-state solution, so you say, well, I support it, but it's dead. So let's move on. It's very easy for those people to say, look, there's 500,000 settlers. There's 1 million settlers. Give your number, because the numbers are very, very flexible depending on who's using them. But that's fine. Throw out your numbers, but let's look at the math. Let's look at what it means. When my colleagues in Peace Now Israel do a campaign which says, less than 4% of Israelis live across the Green Line, and of all Israelis, less than 1% live in the settlements that are isolated, that would have to be moved in the case of an agreement. That is not the death of the two-state solution. If you're looking for reasons to argue that it's over, fine, throw out your numbers. But the facts matter. Is a border possible? It's complicated. It was complicated, as Danny said, 13 years ago. It was complicated 20 years ago when I was serving in Jerusalem at the consulate, and we were first talking about a two-state, well, we didn't talk about states then. It was complicated then, it's complicated now, but as Dan has just shown, it is possible. This is going to be a negotiating issue. But the other part of that premise, that if you have to accept it's not possible, and therefore we have to accept that there's another alternative, is the part that's when I do get frustrated, and sometimes I do get angry. Because I have yet to see anybody, this isn't a matter of I'm so invested as a member of the peace camp, or all of us in this room have so much on the line that we're unwilling to contemplate the very possibility that there's another option. I think all of us in this room have thought about what the options are. I certainly have. And we've challenged our assumptions. And when you challenge your assumptions, and I encourage you to do so, if not the two-state solution, then what? Do you think it's more probable that Israelis and Palestinians will simultaneously and in synchronicity abandon their nationalism? Do you think they'll abandon their right to self-determination as peoples and say, you know what, call it whatever you want, Israel, Pal, whatever, call it, Scandinavian in the Middle East, and we'll all live together and sing Kumbaya. Okay, if you think that's a viable option, if you want to go the direction that Professor Lustig said and said, well, we'll need blood and magic, I'm unwilling to abandon Israelis and Palestinians to more blood. If we get there, if that's where it goes, then that's where it goes. But I'm going to fight tooth and nail, and I think everyone in this room recognizes that if it goes that direction to more blood, at the end of that, and it will be mutual bloodletting. These are two peoples, regardless of the disparity in power, both peoples have an extraordinary ability to inflict misery on the other. They are living in very close quarters. And at the end of that next round of blood, we're going to be right here. We're going to be back here discussing the details of a two-state solution. I believe that morally and pragmatically, as someone who cares about U.S. national security, who cares about Israelis, who cares about Palestinians, who cares about people, that I have an obligation to try to avoid going there. If it goes there, as my colleague from Peace Now said, Gary was very clear, there isn't a point of no return. We're going to be back here talking about two states, whether it's now or in 5 years or in 10 years or more blood. But the idea that we should say, you know what, this is over, let's bring on the blood, let's hope for the magic so people will come around to it and decide to live together in peace. I don't engage in magical thinking. And, as the peace camp, I think we have a tremendous responsibility to push back very, very hard. And it's pushing back both in terms of the facts. And I would encourage all of you to check out the websites of the respective organizations on this panel, and you have maps and things in your packets. The most powerful weapon, the most powerful tool you have, both in defending the two-state solution and advocating for it, are the facts. We are pragmatists, we are realists, we are not fantasists. And this is where the facts take you. For me, I believe right now, as Danny said, this is a moment of tremendous promise. Given what happened in New York a few days ago, I'm more encouraged right now of the possibilities than I've been in a while. I'm not a super, everything's fine sort of person. But I think there is reason to be hopeful, and you all, many of you are going to be going up to the Hill on Tuesday, and you need to take this message to your leaders, to your communities, to your members of Congress, which is, this is not fantasy, this is not left-wing ideology, this is hardcore pragmatism. There is a reason why when we stand in the body politic, we stand today with the former leaders of Israeli intelligence and national security. Those are the pragmatists. They're not the fantasists.
Thank you, Brian. Wrap up the panelist speakers. This over here is Dan Rosso. He's on the staff of J Street. He's assigned to this panel. He's been great. And he is going to wander around with the microphone as you get called on. I'm going to lay out some of the ground rules here. As Jim said, I believe, running the National Democratic Convention is nothing compared to the most difficult and most important job that I've ever had, which is teaching 4th grade. So I can manage this process, and I'm going to do it very brutally so the most number of people can get their questions in. A question is 1, at most 2 sentences that ends asking for information. Anything more than that, I will cut you off. 1 or 2 sentences ending with a request for information. Before we start with the first one, I do want to, Laura talked about facts. In your bags is a document, an Americans for Peace Now document called They Say, We Say. It's fabulous information on a whole range of issues, not just settlements in Jerusalem. It lays out what those on the dark side say and the responses to them. It'll be a great resource for you. It's a really important piece, and you can find that on our website. You can also get through our website, Newsnosh. It's written in Israel. It's snippets of the Israeli press, the American press. It comes in time for your coffee in the morning because it's done in Israel, and a lot of other very important information, peacenow.org. Okay, so first question. Why don't we start right here in the front?
I wonder what would be the status of Hebron?
And I would ask you to direct it to a particular person or to say it's for anyone on the panel that wants to answer.
This is for anyone on the panel that's interested. What would be the status of Hebron in a possible agreement?
What will be the status of Hebron in an agreement? And Yariv is going to take the
Hebron is a very important place for the Jewish people, but Israel was established in 1948 without having Hebron inside Israel. So it doesn't mean that we have to have our Israeli flag in Hebron in order to make it more Jewish, or in order to make Israel, in order to have Israel. So Hebron is a small isolated settlement. Eventually you got 400 settlers living inside the city, and you got Kiryat Arba, that it's a settlement next to Hebron. It's not a big number. The Jewish people has a lot of connection to Hebron, but they will have to come to visit Hebron like tourists, or even maybe to spend the night. I don't know if you know, but many Orthodox Israelis are going to Uman, to the grave of the rabbi from Uman in Ukraine. They are not saying that we should annex Ukraine because it's a holy place and Israel cannot be a Jewish state without this place. So, like many other places, Israel will have to come and visit there. We have to demand from the Palestinians, because this is a holy place for Jewish, that it will remain open for the Jewish people, and people will be able to come there even to spend the night. But as a settlement, as a place that Israel will have sovereignty over, this will be something that Israel will have to give up. It's a compromise. For many Israelis, it's a very painful thing, but it's a compromise that we have to do. There will not be a viable Palestinian state with the settlements in Hebron.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, next question. This woman right here in red.
Just questions directed to Mr. Zayman. You talked about the duly elected Prime Minister of Israel, and then you talked about Kerry's initiative, but we still have the same duly elected Prime Minister of Israel, and with reference to your metaphor pissing from the high board, what makes you think that Netanyahu is going to behave differently rather than just playing for time as he's been doing up to now?
I'm not sure that Netanyahu will. I see no indication of his treating the two-state solution seriously in a way that is compatible with any rational interpretation of the two-state solution. Let me give you a Jerusalem linguistic lesson. When you say, I support the two-state solution, but I do not support the political division of the city of Jerusalem, the literal translation of that is, I don't support the two-state solution. Now, what I'm saying, I don't think is news to anybody who knows Prime Minister Netanyahu, including the President and Secretary Kerry. I think that they understand that either Netanyahu will have to change or Netanyahu will have to go.
Okay, sure, Dan.
I don't know the answer, but it's worth testing. Netanyahu's disposition right now, politically, is significantly different than what it was 3 years ago. He has lost in the elections. He's still the prime minister, but under significantly different conditions. He has lost his home party. The coup has been stolen from him. I don't know if he has it in him to break the coup like Sharon did in 2005. But I don't know what he thinks about his political future, but it's certainly worth testing. He's looking for a different paradigm. I don't know if he has what it takes to go for a two-state solution the whole way, in the way that Danny put forth. But there's nobody better positioned than the American administration to really examine that. And it's worth doing.
Great.